the end of the portion, when we read about the tragic event of the Benos Moav, how they actually went to seduce the men to engage in sex with them. And however, before they would allow them to engage with them, they pulled out this idol, which was called Balpor, and they said, you first have to worship the idol. And the means of worship was defecation. They would defecate on the idol. And there was a plague, and the plague ensued. There were 24,000 casualties. Now, what stopped the plague? Mafter, Zion, at the end of the Parshas Bolok, Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron HaKohen, had seen. Vayokom b'toch Eido, he rose from the midst of the Eido, Vikach Romach b'yodo, and he took a spear in his hand. Vayovu acha ish Yisrael el hakuba, and he went and he pierced Ish Yisrael. Although the man was of status, the man was a prince, the prince of the tribe of Shimon, and people were intimidated to approach him. How does a commoner go and kill a prince? Without hesitation, Pinchas went, despite the fact that he was Ish Yisrael, he was a man of distinction, and he pierced him El Akuba, at the location of his genital. Well, Kuba is actually the location where he was committing this act of illicit sex with this woman. Vayitkor Shneim, and he pierced both of them as Ish Yisrael. The Ish, again, it's reiterating, although he's a person of distinction, he was not intimidated by this. Vesa Ish El Kavasa. He penetrated both of them in that location. And the plague ceased. So now the question is, when it says Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, he had seen. What did he see? So Rashi, if you take a look in Rashi there, Ra Masev Niskar Halacha. He saw what was happening, and when he saw that act happening, it reminded him of something that he was taught by Moshe Rabbeinu. Omar lo Moshe, immediately he came to Moshe, and he said to Moshe, that a person who engages with a non-Jewish woman in a public setting, if one meets the criteria that he's a zealot, he has an obligation to kill that person who's committing this Chil Hashem. Omar lo Karaino digarto iule bifranko. If that is the case, Moshe says to Pinchas, because you're the one who remembered. Moshe evidently forgot the halacha at this moment, because you're the one who is reading the proclamation. You should be the one to deliver it. Miyad, immediately, when Moshe said that to Pinchas, Vayikach Romach b'yodo, he took the spear and he went into the tent there and he pierced them. So the Midrash says, when Pinchas went to do this act of zealotry, he initially went in, he believed he would not come out alive. Why? Because to be able to survive what he did, many, many miracles had to take place. Firstly, how did he even get in? If he goes in with a spear, you realize there was a security detail over there. Anybody going in, which would even questionably put Zimri's life in jeopardy, they wouldn't let him in. And even if he would attempt, they would kill him immediately. He had gone in, walking with a cane, and he had the spear up his sleeve. This is the Gemara. And he said he would like to also perform the act of Balpor. So they let him in, and he was very convincing, Pinchas. He comes in and he gets near Zimri, and he takes the spear out of his sleeve and he attaches it to the cane, which is the handle, and immediately he pierces them. At that moment, what they should have done, they should have pounced on him and killed him. That's the security detail. So the Midrash tells us HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent an angel, and anybody who even approached Pinchas was killed immediately. And after he pierced them, he picked them up, both. Now, whatever the strength, for to have that level of strength, to pick up two adults, the man and the woman, you need enormous strength. Secondly, the spear should have actually snapped from the weight of the two people. Thirdly, when he walked out to show everyone what he had done, the lintel was too low for him to go through the doorway. The doorway lifted itself that he was able to go out straight. So multiple miracles happened to show everyone exactly what happened and what he had done through his act of zealotry. Firstly, he survived. Secondly, he was able to pierce them exactly in the location to indicate what was going on there. Thirdly, he was able to pick them up. And fourthly, he was able to take them out and displayed publicly. Fifthly, they were alive. Normally, that type of wound, person would die instantaneously. Hashem kept them alive, that when he had them on the spear, they both were alive. Zimri and Cosbi Basur, the daughter of Balak, she was the daughter of Balak, he gave his daughter to bring about this level of prosecution of Jewish people. That was his degree of hate for the Jews, that he was even willing to give his daughter to cohabit with the prince of the Jewish people to destroy the Jewish people. This is what happened. But this is Pinchas ben Elos ben Aaron Kohen. This was this display of his zealotry. Only because he did that. When he did that, the plague ceased immediately. Otherwise, the plague would have continued. It would have ensued. And we're going to see at the beginning of Pinchas, Hashem says, if Pinchas wouldn't have expressed his zealotry, which is an expression of his pain, Hashem says, I would have consumed and destroyed the Jewish people because of my wrath. But because he expressed my wrath by doing this act of zealotry, as a result of that, therefore, the Midas Adin, the attribute of justice, was quelled because of this. This is Pinchas. But again, even over here, when Pinchas had seen what was going on, he's referred to as Pinchas ben Elos ben Aaron HaKohen. Normally, when we trace a person's pedigree, it's only traced one generation. Over here, it's traced, it goes back to Aaron. It's not enough. Pinchas ben Elazar is ben Aaron HaKohen. The Torah wants to display his special pedigree. So it's interesting. We'll see Rashi at the beginning of Pinchas explains, based on the Midrash, why it's traced back to the third generation, because immediately they had criticized him. They had criticized him. He said, sure, how do you kill a prince? The only reason why you were able to kill the prince is because Elazar married one of the daughters of Yisro, and Yisro initially was an idolater, and they said because his father, he comes from a pedigree where his grandfather fattened sheep for idolatry, therefore he did this action. How did he have the audacity to do this, to kill a prince? So the Torah goes to trace his pedigree back to Aaron HaKohen, that his pedigree surpasses the pedigree of Zimri. So no one should have a claim against Pinchas, which we're going to explain in a moment. So I asked the question, over there we understand why the Torah has to tell us, has to go beyond his father, has to go back to his grandfather. But over here, when the Torah is telling us when he had seen the act, which reminded him of the halach and he went to consult with Moshe Rabbeinu, he's identified as Pinchas ben Elos ben Aaron HaKohen. He's already here, he's identified, going back 2 generations. When the Torah tells us now at the beginning of Parshas Pinchas, it says, Vaydaber Hashem Moshe Lema, Pinchas ben Elos ben Aaron HaKohen, Heisheves Chamosi, Mi'al B'nai Yisrael. He had retracted my wrath from the B'nai Yisrael, Bekan was Kinosi, B'socham, when he avenged my vengeance in their midst, and therefore, V'lo Chilishis B'nai Yisrael, Bekan was Kinosi. And therefore I did not annihilate the Jewish people with my wrath. So here, it's very good, as it says, Rashi cites the Midrash, we'll read in a moment, that his pedigree has to be traced back to Aaron. Let's take a look at Rashi. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, lefi shehoyu hashvatim bevazim oso. The Shvatim, the tribes, they were disgracing Pinchas. Listen to this. Herisim ben puti zeh, shepitim avi imo, agol avodah zorah. Take a look at this. Ben Puti, the father of his mother, had fattened calves for idolatry. V'horag Nisi Shevet mi Yisrael, he killed the prince of Israel. Leficha ba'akos Yisrael Aaron achar Aaron. Therefore, the Torah goes immediately and traces his pedigree to Aaron, which his pedigree had greater value than Zimri ben, who was the prince of the tribe of Shimon. So the question I ask every year. You have a person is about to walk off the curb, and some homeless person, and the person was a person of great status, and some homeless person goes and grabs the person by his collar, pulls him back, and saves his life, that he shouldn't be crushed by the bus. The person who was saved is going to say to the homeless person, who do you think you are? You grabbed me by my collar, pulled me back, that I shouldn't be killed? I mean, it's insanity. If not for the man's intervention at that moment, he would have died. God says factually, if not for the act of zealotry of Pinchas, I would have destroyed the Jewish people. Therefore, we have to trace his pedigree back to Aaron, because they're disgracing him, saying, how do you have the audacity to kill a prince? It's only because your grandfather had fattened sheep or calves for idolatry. I mean, the whole thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, what's the basis for the disgrace? God says openly, I would have destroyed the Jewish people due to my wrath, but it's only because Pinchas had avenged my vengeance, therefore I did not destroy them. So how could you disgrace the man? He saved the day. There would not be a Jewish people if not for Pinchas. Just a simple understanding. So, and for that, God has to respond and say, his pedigree is greater than yours. So that will actually dispel this claim against him. What's the claim? He saved the day. So what I say every year, that, there's always a guilt conscience. If Pinchas did it, why didn't they? Such a public chil Hashem, a man publicly disgracing God at this level, cohabiting in a public setting with a non-Jewish woman. How do you do such a thing? Anybody who has a sense of what's going on immediately should react and do what Pinchas did. Why didn't they? Pinchas was the sole person to do it. You know what they answered? Everybody has to have an answer to relieve their conscience. And there's a tremendous conscience over here that has to be addressed. You know what they said? The reason why he was able to do it, we couldn't do it, because we come from a pure pedigree. We'd have this kind of pedigree in our background. It's like a person who was raised, his great-grandfather was a gangster, right? He was a member, God forbid, of Murder Incorporated. So it's part of, the family lore that they do these things. So they say, why he was able to do it? Because that's his background. We don't have that background. So it was to relieve their conscience. It wasn't as a claim against Pinchas, but factually, coming up with that reason why he could do it and they didn't do it is a disgrace. Pinchas is able to do it because. The answer is no. The reason why he did it, he's ben Aaron HaKohen. It's due to his purity, because he has a level of purity which you don't. Oh, so that's okay. As long as they can put it in a context that then they don't feel the guilt, he surpasses us. Somehow, why he yes and us not? So they had to attribute it to his background that he descends from a person who fattened calves for idolatry. But that's a disgrace for Pinchas. Ben Aaron HaKohen, no, it's because his purity surpasses yours. His pedigree is beyond your pedigree. And because he has a greater acuity for Kiddush Hashem, that's why he did it. And so that's okay. That's why he was able to, we couldn't do it. So over here, that's the reason why it had to be traced back to Aaron HaKohen. That's how we explained it. But over here, it's very good. The reason why the Torah has to trace his pedigree back to there, because of this criticism or this identification that his grandfather fattened calves for idolatry. But initially, when he saw what was happening, and it says, Vayar Pinchas ben Elos ben Aaron HaKohen, over there, when he saw and he remembered the halacha which he was taught by Moshe Rabbeinu, that Abol Aramis, that a man who engages with a non-Jewish woman in a public setting, if you're a zealot, you have an obligation to kill that person. Why over there do I have to trace his pedigree back? There it's talking about when it was initiated, when he took action. It should say, Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar. What do we do, ben Aaron HaKohen? Right? Over there, it's a little bit difficult. Here, it's good. But over there, when he actually did the act, why there did it have to be traced back to Aaron HaKohen? Okay? So there's a word from Meir Simcha who says it right at the beginning of Pinchos, Parshas Pinchos.
Rabbi.
1 second. And he says differently than the Midrash. He explains, we'd read 2 weeks ago, when Aaron passed away, what happened? So it says, Melech Harod came and attacked the Jewish people. Why did Melech Harod attack? He was the king of the Canaanim. Why did he attack the Jewish people? Because the Gemara tells us, and Rashi cites the Midrash, that the clouds of glory were there only in the merit of Aaron. When Aaron passed away, the clouds of glory dispersed. So the king, Arod, the king of Canaan, said, evidently, the Jews are no longer worthy of God's protection. That means they're vulnerable. And he attacked us. At that moment, there were a very large segment of the Jewish people, Rashi cites Yerushalmi, who decided to go back. They said, we're going back to Egypt. So Moshe said to Elazar, at that moment, take the tribes of Levi and go after any of those who are going back and bring them back. A number of the families of Levi were killed. Levi is the smallest tribe. And other families were killed in this to bring them back. But it happened when Aaron passed away. Elazar himself, how does he go and lead the Jews? We're here, you're a minority. You're putting your lives in jeopardy. The answer is, when it comes to Chil Hashem, they're willing to put their lives on the line. That was a display of the kanois, of the zealotry. So where did Pinchas inherit that ability to be a zealot at that level? That's Ben Elazar Cohen. That's Ben Elazar. What about Aaron? We find the story with the Chet Egel. Why did Aaron participate to try to delay, but factually there's a participation in the Chet Egel? Because he said, when he saw Chur, his nephew, being killed, he said, if they kill me, the Jews will never be atoned. They will never be atoned. Somebody shout, Mark, could you just silence your computer? And if they kill me, because I am a Kohen and a Navi, they'll never be forgiven. So better I should put my share in the world to come on the line, rather than putting the Jewish people in a position they should never be forgiven. That's the reason why Aaron participated. He did the wrong thing. He was willing to put his share in the world to come on the line for the sake of the Jewish people. The two things Pinchas had done. Firstly, he had put his life in jeopardy. That means he had such a capacity to feel God's pain that it wasn't worth living if this level of Chil Hashem takes place. Where did he inherit that from? He inherited that from his father, Elazar. And what about, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that when Pinchas had Zimri and Cosby on that spear, the plague was ensuing. And David says, Vayefalu Pinchas im Elokim. He took God to task, and he took them and he slammed them on the ground, and he says to Hashem, I've done this, when is the plague going to stop? When you speak to God in such a direct way, you understand? You're sharing the world to come is online. You don't speak to God this way. But Pinchas was so pained for the Jewish people that they were dying, the plague was continuing, and only once he did that, it stopped. So therefore we find two things. Pinchas had the characteristic, he was willing to put his physicality on the line. Secondly, he put his whole spiritual life on the line. Because when it says, Ossi, he took God to task. When the plague was ensuing, he took God to task. When you take God to task, if you don't have a basis And the way you speak, we find by Avram, when he pleaded on behalf of Sodom, he says, Cholilo. He says, maybe I'm speaking out of turn. Maybe I'm not speaking respectfully, sufficiently, whatever it is. Pinchas did not take that into account. So he put his spirituality, his world to come in jeopardy. So therefore we trace his pedigree, not only to his father, who his father put his life on the line, but to Aaron HaKohen, who put his spirituality on the line for the sake of the Jewish people. That's how Rameir Simcha learns. So Rameir Simcha's interpretation is good back over there when he saw the Torah wants to display his characteristics in the physical and the spiritual sense. Where does this come from? It's tracing it back to Elazar's father and back to Aaron. And that's why he was able to do what he did, because he inherited both of these characteristics.